Back when this happened, I was 15 and had a part-time job at a burger place in my small town. I'm not sure if anything weird was happening before this, but everything happened on one night. My friend Jake and I usually worked the evening shifts at the burger joint. It was a small place with only a few tables because we mostly focused on takeout and delivery. We got our jobs during high school and just kept at it. Our town was quiet, and the job wasn't too hard. We usually had relaxed days with not much going on. But that night, there was a light storm outside, so business was slow. We had a few orders, but by 10 p.m., Jake suggested we start cleaning up early and maybe even clock out 15 minutes ahead. I agreed and grabbed some rags to wipe the tables when the phone at the front desk rang. I answered the phone after a few rings and asked, "How can we help you today?" I didn't get any response, just silence. I thought it might be a prank call, so I put the phone down and went back to cleaning tables. While I was working, I noticed a light from a car parked a few spots away, even though it was raining. It seemed strange because our burger place was the only one around, and there were no other cars. I shrugged it off and continued working. Later, the phone rang again, and this time, my colleague Jake answered. I could hear a muffled voice from the other end. After a short conversation, Jake hung up. At the same time, the light in the car turned off, and they drove away. It was all a bit mysterious. I told Jake about something strange I saw. I thought it was weird, but he didn't seem concerned. He said it was probably just an old person ordering a burger for delivery. I looked at the empty parking lot and thought it didn't make sense to order delivery right outside the restaurant. But I trusted Jake and thought it was nothing to worry about. Jake started making a burger, and I kept cleaning. After 10 minutes, he gave me the boxed-up order for delivery. I went to my car in the rain and checked the address on my phone. It was 11 minutes away, not too far. The roads were empty, and Google Maps took me to a neighborhood with big houses. I turned into a long driveway, and it led to a dead-end street with 3 more driveways. I parked my car in front of a fancy old house, but it looked dark inside. I tried calling the person who ordered food, but no one answered, just a voicemail. Feeling annoyed, I went back to my car in the rain, left the burger on the seat, and started to leave. Sometimes people order fake food or don't show up, and it always bothers me. Later, when I returned to the restaurant with Jake, we heard a loud noise from the front. We rushed there and found a small crack in the door. When we opened it, we saw a big rock outside that could have caused damage. The parking lot was empty, and we were confused and a little scared. We thought about calling the police, but decided to finish cleaning and tell our manager the next day. We finished cleaning quickly and left through the back door where we parked our cars. On my way home, I thought about all the strange things that happened. When I got home and walked inside, I felt uneasy. It was late, and I wanted a snack. Before I opened the pantry, I heard a car splashing through puddles outside. I peeked through the window and saw the same car from the burger place parked outside. I realized it was the same car that followed me home. I stayed by the window, and after a minute of no movement, I called Jake, telling him what was happening. He told me to call the cops right away. Nervously, I dialed 911, and they said someone would be on their way. I heard a car door open and close, so I quickly hung up. Looking back out the window, a man in dark clothes and a hood covering his face was walking up my driveway. I was really scared, so I closed the curtains and waited. I heard someone walking towards the window, and everything got quiet, except for the sound of rain. After a while, I looked through the curtain, and the man was staring at me with cold eyes. He banged on the window, and I was really scared. But suddenly, it stopped. No more banging or footsteps, just the rain hitting the window. When the police came, the man and his car were gone. I told them everything, but they didn't believe me. It didn't make sense, and there was no reason for the man to do that. The police said they would keep an eye on the area and told me to lock my doors. The next day at work, Jake and I felt really worried, not knowing what might happen. We told our boss about the strange things that had been going on, and he promised to keep an eye on it. That night, we worked like usual, but we couldn't forget what happened the night before. Around 10 p.m., something unexpected happened. The phone rang again, and I answered it nervously, expecting silence. But this time, a weird voice came through saying,
"You shouldn't have called the police. I just wanted to talk."
My heart raced as I listened to the creepy voice. Jake and I looked at each other nervously. The voice continued.
Meet me at the old factory on Oak Street in 30 minutes. Come alone or else.
Caller hung up, and I was scared. I told Jake about the message, and we talked about whether we should tell the police or not. But the threat of or else made it a really tough decision for us. Even though we were a bit unsure at first, we couldn't resist our curiosity and decided to check out the old factory. It was a spooky place that had been empty for a long time, and people said weird things had happened there before. As we got closer, the shadows were moving around in the moonlight, and the air felt really tense. The rain was getting heavier, making everything even more eerie. When we got to the entrance, the door made a creaky sound, almost like it wanted us to come inside. We went in carefully, and our footsteps echoed in the big, empty building. It was really dark, and all we could hear was the raindrops on the roof. Out of nowhere, we saw a faint light in the distance. We followed it through the confusing hallways, staying alert. The light led us to a room with an old wooden table and 2 chairs. There was a single envelope on the table. I picked it up carefully, and inside was a note that someone had written by hand. The message said, "I know about your favorite foods and your normal daily routines. I'm keeping an eye on you. If you want to learn more, follow the hints I've left behind. But be careful, not everyone is who they appear to be." We felt really confused and scared as we tried to understand this mysterious message. Even though it was creepy, our curiosity made us go to an old factory to find clues. The first clue took us to an empty park, where we found another note that hinted at our next stop. With each clue we uncovered, the mystery got even more puzzling. The clues seemed to reveal private details about our lives, things that a stranger shouldn't know. It became clear that this wasn't just a random threat. It was a strange game, and we were being forced to play without wanting to. We followed the last clue and ended up at a lonely cabin in the woods. It was raining really hard, and we were all wet when we got close to the spooky cabin. The door was a bit open, and a cold wind was blowing through the trees. Inside, it felt really creepy and quiet. In the middle of the room, there was a person wearing a hood, and they were facing away from us. The room was not very bright, and the person's presence made us feel really scared. The hooded person spoke, and their voice echoed in the cabin, saying,
You followed the path. Now, the truth.
Then the person turned around, and we saw it was our boss from the burger place. We were so surprised and couldn't believe it. He explained that it was all part of a plan to see how determined we were to find out the truth. It was like a strange test to see how far we would go. The guy we thought we could trust actually planned all the weird things that happened to us. The strange phone calls, the hints that led us to that cabin. He thought if we faced our fears, it would toughen us up. But here's the kicker. We were unknowingly part of his little test. When we found out, we were furious and felt betrayed. Our boss, the person we believed in, was just messing with our heads for fun. The whole thing was a trick, a bunch of tricky mind games that messed with our heads and made us question what was real. After everything happened, we told the police about our boss's bad actions, and he got in trouble for doing something not right. It really affected us and made us feel scared, confused, and more aware of how people can act in strange ways. When I think back to that night, I still feel a spooky feeling, especially on quiet, rainy days. Surprising and strange things that happen left marks on how we see the world. It was a really weird time in our lives that made us wonder about who we can trust, why people do things, and how easily things can go from normal to really strange. I usually finish work at midnight and usually take the same way home. But tonight, I decided to stop by a late-night store. Instead of my usual route, I took a back road. It was around 12:15 p.m., maybe a bit later. In my town, everything closes when it gets dark. The only ones awake are the store clerk and me. The back road doesn't have many houses. On one side, it's mostly cornfields, and on the other, there's a forest. Since it was summer and a really nice night, I rolled down all my windows and drove without rushing. Suddenly, I heard a scream that made me feel scared. It sounded like someone was in trouble. Without thinking, I hit the brakes and stopped on the side of the road. The store clerk and I were the only ones still awake. The forest to my right seemed really dark and mysterious. I heard it again, a lady's voice shouting for help from the woods. I got out of my car and asked, "Where are you?" She cried back. Without hesitating, I went into the forest, pushing branches aside. I kept asking, "Where are you?" As she kept screaming, I went further into the forest every few seconds. It felt like a spooky movie scene, with the quiet road behind me, surrounded by cornfields and the forest. I shouted, "Where are you?" The woman kept crying, so I went through the bushes to find her. But something strange was going on. It seemed like no matter how much I walked, her voice stayed the same distance away. It was like being stuck in a weird trap. I got scared and stopped moving. I felt something was wrong. So I went back the way I came, pushing aside the bushes, and ran to my car. I could see my car's lights through the trees, but I could still hear the woman crying. Even when I ran fast, she stayed the same distance behind me. It felt like she was chasing me. I was out of breath when I got into my car, started it, and drove away as fast as possible. I was really scared. I called 911 on my phone, not sure if they would believe me, but I had to try. They said they would send someone to check it out. The next day, I told my mom and dad about the night drive home and the scary experience in the forest. 10 days later, a man training his dog to hunt found a woman's body in her mid-30s in the woods near the road where I heard those screams for help. The newspaper said there was no proof of murder or anything like that. They didn't know how she died. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. The forest, which seemed calm during the day, now felt mysterious and scary. I couldn't believe that just a few days ago, I was there in the dark, hearing those cries for help. Days passed, and I kept replaying that night in my head. When I heard the news about the woman's body being found, it made me feel a mix of relief and sadness. I was relieved that I didn't go deeper into the forest, but I felt really sad for the woman who lost her life. The town was very excited about some news, and everyone was talking about it. Some thought it was just a strange accident, while others believed there might be something more suspicious happening. I couldn't help but feel a bit guilty. I thought that if I had gone back into the forest and found her, things might be different. I tried to go back to my usual routine, but I couldn't stop thinking about the forest. It felt like there was a dark secret hiding behind the trees. I wondered if the person who checked it out found any clues. The newspaper said there was no proof of murder, but something didn't make sense. As the weeks went by, the town slowly went back to normal. Shock of the mysterious death started to go away, but I still couldn't forget. Whenever I looked at the forest, it made me uneasy. It seemed like the trees were keeping a secret they didn't want to tell. One evening, while I was driving home, I decided to go to the place where I heard screams before. The sun was going down, and the road had long shadows. As I got closer to the area, I started feeling strange. I pulled over to try to get rid of the uncomfortable feeling I had. That's when I saw something strange, a faint light coming from deep in the forest. It was like the light you see when fireflies are far away. I got curious, and even though I knew it might not be a good idea, I went into the woods again. As I walked in, the light became stronger. I could see it flickering between the trees. It led me deeper into the forest, and the feeling around me changed. The air felt different, and it got really quiet, unlike the usual sounds you hear at night. Finally, I got to a little open space in the woods. Right there in the middle, I found a bunch of lanterns in a circle. They gave off a nice, warm light that made the whole place feel kind of magical. And guess what? In the middle of all this, I saw the lady who was calling for help. She sat on a fallen tree, looking at me with sad and tired eyes. My heart was pounding because this whole thing felt so strange. Without saying anything, she gestured for me to sit next to her. I was unsure, but curious, so I sat down. Then she started talking, telling me a story about that night. She got lost in the forest and couldn't figure out where to go. The cries for help were real. She was just trying to find her way back. But as she went deeper into the woods, everything started messing with her mind. The sounds and distances got all messed up, making it even harder for her to find her way. In the middle of her scared feelings, she found some lanterns. The special light from the lanterns showed her the way to a clear space. She said an old couple who lived on the edge of town put those lanterns there. They took care of the forest and made it a safe place for people who were lost. The woman's story was like a big surprise. The forest, which used to be scary, turned out to be different and had a surprising truth. She told me the old couple passed away a long time ago, but their lanterns still lit up, helping and comforting those who needed it. As I listened to the strange and amazing story, the woman thanked me for trying to help. She told me she saw the person investigating her case and knew I had called for help. It was a weird turn of events. The forest that seemed spooky had become a safe place, and the woman was one of the people looked after by the old couple's lanterns. I suddenly realized something important. The forest wasn't a dangerous place. It was actually keeping us safe. The old couple's lanterns were like guides for lost spirits, and my meeting with the woman showed me how life can surprise us. We sat there together for a bit, surrounded by the gentle light from the lanterns. The woman thanked me for trying to help, and I felt like I had found closure. When I left the clearing, I looked back one more time. The lanterns were still shining, casting a cozy light on the woman. I walked away feeling grateful for the unexpected twist that life can bring. Before I continue to the next story, if you are interested in earning from YouTube without showing your face, or without making videos by yourself using artificial intelligence, like the video that you are watching right now, then I have a special free training for you. Check the first link in the description below to get instant access. I used to work from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. for a few years. The job was a bit tough, but the money was good. The part that worried me the most was driving home alone at night. It wasn't great being a single girl on the road in the dark, but I needed the job. Sometimes things got scary. Like once, a guy started running toward my car at a red light, and another time, I felt like someone was following me after I got off the freeway. It was creepy when people drove right next to me at the same speed. My coworkers also had some scary experiences, especially one who almost got kidnapped. I worked in the criminal justice field, and my workplace was just across the street from the jail, so there were always shady characters around. The last hour of my work was always hard. I really wanted to sleep, especially by around 11 p.m. I had to push myself to stay awake for the 30-minute drive home. I lived with my parents in a house with a big backyard. Behind the backyard there was an alley, and beyond that, the city limit. The neighborhood behind our house had sidewalks with backyard fences instead of open streets. Even though our area wasn't bad, people still walked on the sidewalks regularly. There was a corner store and a bus stop nearby. Further down, there was a school with a playground and a park with basketball and tennis courts. Even late at night, I would see people walking around. One guy I often saw was a man with a cap and longish hair. He usually walked alone, and I passed by him when I drove home. He didn't seem scary, and I saw him enough to recognize him. One night, a man who usually walks around my neighborhood got closer to my house than usual. I wasn't scared because I had seen him before. That night, I drove my big truck and parked a bit outside the driveway so others could leave early in the morning. I parked close to the sidewalk. When I got out of the truck to grab my things, I saw the man rushing towards my passenger door. It surprised me, and I suddenly felt very scared. Instead of locking my door, I stepped out of the truck. I don't know why. Maybe I was being silly or tired. I thought I might have to scream for help. I took a deep breath and turned to face the sidewalk, expecting something to happen. But when I did, I saw the man back on the sidewalk, walking the way he always did past my parents' house and onto the next neighborhood. I quickly ran to the door, struggled with the keys, and finally, I got inside the house. I fell on my bed, really tired and couldn't sleep well. It might not sound like a big deal, but it was really scary for me. I was alone with a guy outside, and I don't know what would have happened if I didn't leave. It was just him and me. I don't know if he wanted to talk or ask me something. I'm not even sure if he tried to open my door. Maybe he just wanted to get a closer look at me in the truck. I'll never find out. Days went by, and I started feeling better. I didn't see that man again, and things went back to normal. I kept working late shifts, driving home alone, but the fear from that night went away. One evening after work, I went home as usual. The night was quiet, and the streets were empty. I parked my truck close to the sidewalk, just like always. I got out, locked the door, and walked toward my house. Everything seemed normal until I looked down the sidewalk and saw the same guy with the cap and longish hair. My heart raced because I hadn't seen him for a few days, and I started to feel worried. He was coming towards my house, and this time he wasn't rushing. I wasn't sure whether to wait or go inside. Eventually, I couldn't resist my curiosity, so I decided to see what he wanted. I stood at the door and watched him come closer. As he approached, I could see his face better. He looked normal and not like someone dangerous. There was something different about him, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. When he reached my driveway, he stopped and seemed unsure. I felt confused and a bit scared. Without saying anything, he gave me a small envelope. I took it, confused, and he nodded before walking away down the sidewalk without saying a word. I stood there, holding the envelope and looking at it. It felt really light, and I couldn't tell what was in it. I decided to open it carefully, kind of worried that something bad might be inside. But when I opened it, there was just a note, neatly folded. The note said, "I'm sorry if I scared you that night. I didn't mean to. I've seen you driving around, and I always wanted to talk but didn't know how. Here's a little gift to make up for it. Take care." I was really surprised. I never expected the man who scared me to say sorry. Inside the envelope, there was a small, pretty bracelet. It was simple but nice. I felt confused, relieved, and like I kind of understood. After that day, I never saw the man again. This surprising turn taught me something new. Sometimes, things that seem scary are just big misunderstandings. People can surprise you in unexpected ways. The bracelet reminded me that looks can be deceiving. It's good to give someone a chance before deciding what they're like. Life went on, and the scary drives at night weren't as bad. The twist in the story turned fear into a lesson about understanding and being kind to others. My name is Jake. Last year, I started working with Postmates after losing my part-time job at a store. I saw ads everywhere, claiming it's an easy and chilled job with quick money. Some of my friends were interested too, so I thought I'd give it a shot and see if it lived up to the hype. Turns out, it wasn't as great as they said. Driving around to make deliveries was stressful, and sometimes the pay was just a few bucks. I'm just a teenager, and my only bills are for my car payments and insurance, so I didn't need a ton of money. But it felt like I wasn't getting fair pay for the time and effort I put in. I kept thinking about getting a different job, but I was mostly lazy. After a bad experience, I decided to quit right away. The customer's address was only about 10 minutes away in a not-so-fancy neighborhood with old, small houses. It's funny because people in these smaller, cheaper houses usually give better tips than rich folks. When I arrived, I noticed that the house had all its lights off. It wasn't the scariest thing, but it caught my attention. I walked up the driveway and knocked on the front door quickly. I took out my phone to take a picture of the delivery on the porch. Suddenly, a man yelled from my left, near the corner of the house. I got scared, said hi awkwardly, and he walked towards me with the key, while unlocking the front door with the key. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do or say, so I just stood there looking silly. He asked me to come inside, saying he needed my help because I took a long time to get there, and it wouldn't take much time. I hesitated and said, no, I'm okay. I should really get back to work. The man got mad, took a step toward me, and reached out like he wanted to grab me. I quickly moved away, backed up, and walked away from the porch. As I reached the house driveway, really bright car lights suddenly shone on me. The guy who answered the door quickly ran outside and circled the house. Meanwhile, the car pulled into the driveway with the homeowners inside. Turns out, the person who opened the door wasn't a resident, and the homeowners were surprised to see him. They didn't know him and had no clue how he got a key to their house. We called the police and told them everything. Now that I think about it, the guy probably wanted me to hurry because he knew the homeowners might return soon. He likely wanted enough time to do something before they got back. The police came, took our statements, and tried to figure out the situation. They promised to investigate and inform us if they found anything. I still don't know what exactly happened that night or what the guy was planning to do. I've decided to stop making deliveries though. Now, I work as a driver for Postmates 3 to 4 days a week, depending on my other job. It's a much better and safer job for me. But here's a surprising story. A few weeks after a strange incident, the police called me. They had caught the guy, Kevin, who tried to get me into a house. It turns out Kevin was a burglar who targeted empty houses. He had a plow. He would watch delivery drivers, like me, figure out when they were delivering to a house, and then use a fake key to break in. His goal was to steal things and get away before the homeowners returned. He had been doing this for a while without getting caught. That night when he tried to grab me, it wasn't just about getting inside before the homeowners came back. He wanted me to help him carry the stolen stuff out quickly. That's why he got angry when I hesitated. The police caught him, and now I feel safer doing my job. Kevin wasn't working by himself. He had a bunch of friends who were also burglars, and they were all part of a big organized crime group. The police had been trying to catch these guys for a long time. When I crossed paths with Kevin, it turned out to be a big deal for the cops. They asked me if I could go to court and tell my story, and I said yes. The trial was a bit scary, but it felt good to know that what happened to me was important in bringing these criminals to justice. Kevin and his gang got caught, and our neighborhood became safer. Even though my delivery job didn't go the way I thought, it ended up leading to something really important, helping to stop a group of burglars and making our community better. I still do my Postmates drives, but now I see life's surprises in a whole new way. I have a job that makes me work until late at night, and my working hours can vary a lot. Usually, I end up finishing a bit later. My workplace is outside a big city, and I live about 20 minutes away in a more countryside area. The roads are usually quiet when I drive home, especially late at night or early in the morning. I drive a regular SUV, nothing fancy. I enjoy the peacefulness of the roads during my drive home. There's no traffic, just the quiet night. The area around my house is surrounded by woods, so it has a country feel. One night, I finished work a little after midnight. The roads were almost empty, and the drive home was easy. As I got near my house, I was on a quiet road with woods on both sides. It's a narrow road with only one lane going my way and another lane for the opposite direction. There's not much space on the sides, just a small ditch before the trees. The only light was from my headlights, and it felt peaceful. Suddenly, I saw something up ahead running onto the road. It caught my attention because it was unexpected. Normally, you'd think it's a deer, but I could tell right away it wasn't. It looked like a person, a man, to be exact. He was far away, but I drove closer, slowing down. As I got closer, I could see he was dressed all in black and wearing a black ski mask. That seemed suspicious. He stopped right in the middle of the road, facing me. I wondered why a man would run out from the woods and stand there. I continued to drive closer, but at a much slower pace. When I was driving, a guy blocked my path. I tried going around him, but he kept blocking me. It felt weird, and I got really close to him. He wasn't asking for help. He just stood there trying to stop me. I stopped my car, and he started walking toward me. It felt wrong, so I decided to leave. I quickly put my car in reverse, and he started walking faster. I backed up, but I wasn't good at driving backward. The guy started running after me. I realized I had to escape, so I decided to turn my car around. I turned the wheel, almost going off the road, then stopped and switched to drive. At that moment, the guy caught up and tried to open my locked passenger side door. He hit it a few times before I drove away quickly. As I was driving, I noticed a guy behind me in my rearview mirror. Tried to catch up, but I managed to stay ahead. Later, he stood in the middle of the road and then disappeared. I didn't want to go through that area again, so I took a different way home. I called the police, but when they arrived, he was gone. About 10 minutes later, I got home safely. I kept driving my usual route, but whenever I passed that place, I worried someone might come out of the woods. Thankfully, nothing happened again. I'm not sure what the man wanted, but I'm relieved I got away. After a few weeks, I got used to my routine. One night, after a late shift, I was driving home on my usual route. I had almost forgotten about the strange encounter, but I still felt a bit uneasy when passing the spot where the man appeared. It was a quiet night, and I was driving on a peaceful road surrounded by trees. As I got closer, I felt a bit cautious, but everything seemed normal. Just when I thought everything was okay, I saw something strange in my rearview mirror. There was a car behind me, following me for a few turns. I wasn't sure if it was just going the same way or if there was something else going on. I tried to calm down, thinking it might be a coincidence. I kept driving, but the car behind me stayed close. I took some random turns to see if it would still follow, and it did. I started to get nervous, wondering if it had something to do with the mysterious man in black from before. I chose to take a different road that I'd never used before, to try and shake off the car that seemed to be following me. As I drove through streets I didn't know, I wondered why someone would be tailing me. Was it related to that strange encounter earlier? Or just a random thing? Even on this new route, the car kept following me, and I started to feel really worried, not sure what to do next. I decided to go to the police station, thinking it would be safer with the police around if something shady was happening. But the car kept following me, and my heart was racing. When I got to the police station and parked, I hoped that being there would make the mysterious follower leave. Surprisingly, the car pulled into the parking lot behind me. I had to decide whether to stay in my car or go into the station. After thinking for a bit, I took a deep breath and chose to be brave and go inside. As I approached the entrance, I saw the person from the other car coming out. It turned out to be a woman, not the mysterious man in black from earlier. She seemed worried and told me she had been following me because she noticed something strange. She said there was a person hiding in the backseat of my car. My heart raced as I processed this information. I quickly went back to my car, and with the help of the police, we found a person hiding in the backseat, the same man in black from that creepy night. Somehow, he had managed to sneak into my car without me noticing. The police took control of a scary situation. They caught a man and asked him lots of questions. It turns out he was up to no good. His strange behavior on the road that night was just the start of a bad plan. The lady who followed me felt something was wrong. She acted quickly and maybe saved me from danger. The whole thing scared me. It made me realize that life can surprise us in different ways. It wasn't magic, just a real and creepy experience. It taught me to always be careful, especially during late-night drives. Since then, I've been extra careful, checking my car well before every trip. The memory of that night still sticks with me. I drive a big van for work, delivering stuff to family-owned stores in my town. This happened about 4 months ago during one of my night routes. It was around 11 p.m. and I had just finished dropping off the last batch of products for the night. Now, I had to return the van to the warehouse, which was about 30 minutes away. As I was driving for about 5 minutes, I noticed a car behind me at a traffic light. It was just me and them, no other cars around. When the light turned green, I started driving, but after a few more minutes, I realized they were still right behind me. Normally, people pass me because my van is big and slow, but these folks didn't. It felt a bit strange. As I was driving, the lights from the car behind me became really bright and started blinding me. They were so close that I couldn't even see the light because my van was blocking it. The car was practically right behind me, just a foot or two away, even though there was an empty lane next to us. They didn't go around. Instead, they kept tailgating me. That made me feel a bit nervous. I decided to slow down at a stop sign, thinking of turning to get away from them. But just as I stopped, there was a loud bang. The car behind me had bumped into my van. It wasn't a huge crash, but it shook the whole van and pushed me forward a bit. I was sure there was some damage. I put the van in park and unbuckled, ready to check the damage. Before I could get out, a guy appeared at my window, smiling and signaling to talk. I opened the door, and as I stepped out, I noticed 2 more guys at the back of my van, both staring at me. The guy at the window started making excuses as we walked over to look at the bumper. But it was pretty obvious he was completely drunk. His words were all slurred, and he didn't seem concerned about crashing into me at all. The other guys also seemed really drunk, but I couldn't be certain. My van and his car were in worse condition than I thought. I asked the guy for his insurance, then went to get mine. When I came back, neither of them had moved. I asked again for his insurance, but they just stared at me silently. It got weird, and I felt my heart racing. I turned to go back to my van, but before I could reach the door, all their footsteps came up behind me. One of them grabbed me and pushed me against the side of the van. The guy holding me threatened me while the others took things from their car. My head was pressed against the van for what felt like a long time. Then he pushed me away and made me walk towards their car. The others finished grabbing stuff and they all got into the car. The guy behind me rushed me, trying to push me into the back seat. I knew if I got in that car, things wouldn't end well. I fought back with all my strength, making it as hard as possible for them to get me inside. After about 20 seconds of struggling, he threw me away and got in the car. They drove off, leaving me standing there. I woke up and quickly went to get my phone from the middle compartment in the car. I called the police because some guys had attacked me, but we couldn't figure out who they were, and they haven't been caught yet. I wasn't sure if this was a one-time thing or if they had done it before. It was really scary to think about what might have happened if they had managed to pull me into their car. Then, something strange happened. While I was waiting for the police, a guy in a beat-up pickup truck showed up. He looked at my car and asked if everything was okay. I told him what happened, and it turned out he saw the whole thing from a distance. His name was Jake, and he said he was just waiting for a friend nearby. Jake offered to stay with me until the police came. I was a bit unsure at first, but he seemed sincere. While we waited, we talked about random things. Jake told me about his job as a mechanic and how much he enjoyed fixing old trucks. It was comforting to have someone there who wasn't involved in the scary situation. When the police finally arrived, Jake stayed to tell them what happened. He explained everything, even things I didn't notice. The officers thanked him for being a witness and asked if he could come with me to the police station to tell them more. While we were on our way to the station, Jake shared something scary. He recognized the guys who attacked me. They were known for causing problems in the area, especially at local bars. Jake had dealt with them before while fixing cars for people in the neighborhood. At the police station, Jake's information was really helpful. The officers knew about these troublemakers and wanted to catch them. Jake's detailed account gave the police a better understanding of what happened. They promised to do everything they could to find the people responsible. Weeks passed, and we hadn't heard anything from the police. I was starting to think those guys who crashed into my van would never get caught. Then one evening, the police called me. They found the car that hit my van, but it was abandoned in a faraway place outside town. The guys were gone, but the police found something strange in the car, a bag full of money. Suddenly, things got interesting. It wasn't just a random accident. The police thought those guys might be up to something illegal, and the crash could be a way to distract everyone. The bag of cash raised more questions. What were they doing, and why did they crash into my van? The police kept investigating, trying to uncover the mystery. Jake and I were brought in for more questioning, and what we said became really important. The more we helped, the more determined the police were to figure out the truth. Several months went by, and the investigation into the mysterious guys and the bag of cash hit a roadblock. It seemed like we were getting nowhere, and it was frustrating. It looked like the whole thing would remain a mystery forever. But one day, the police surprised me with a visit. They had made a breakthrough. The cash we found was connected to a series of robberies in the area. It turned out that the guys were part of a bigger criminal group, and the car crash was a desperate attempt to escape from the police. With this new information, the police worked harder to find and catch the criminals. They teamed up with other towns, and the search for the troublemakers gained speed. What started with a strange car following me ended up revealing a bigger criminal operation that had been causing trouble in the area for months. In the end, the police caught the bad guys who were behind a series of robberies. It turns out that on that night, they weren't just trying to create chaos. They were also trying to hide their involvement in a recent theft. The bag of money they had was stolen, and the loud crash they caused was meant to distract everyone from their illegal actions. Thinking back on that strange night, I find it fascinating how a seemingly ordinary event turned into a complicated story of crime and mystery. The surprising turn of events not only kept me anxious, but also brought justice to a community dealing with a lot of crime. Even though things are back to normal now, the memories of that night remind me that real life can sometimes be even more bizarre than stories we make up. I was driving around, delivering pizzas for Pizza Planet. The night was a bit slow, and I ended up hanging out in the shop, waiting for orders. It was a little after 10 p.m. when a guy walked in. He looked like he was in his early 30s, but he seemed tired, maybe a bit drunk. My coworker took his order at the counter, and I was in the back organizing pizza boxes. The guy was shy, and something seemed off about him. He ordered a medium pizza, but surprised us by wanting it delivered. He gave my coworker a piece of paper with an address on it. Weird, right? I mean, who forgets where they live? And it's not every day someone comes into the shop to order delivery to their own house. About 10 minutes later, I packed up the pizza and started driving. Something unexpected happened when I noticed a car following me. It was the only other car on the road, and it was acting strange, speeding up, slowing down, and swerving. I wasn't a detective, but I thought maybe the driver is drunk. It might seem funny now, but back then, I thought it was just a coincidence. As I got into the neighborhood, the car behind me pulled over. In about 30 seconds, I parked in front of a regular-looking house. I walked up to the front porch, knocked on the door, and waited. It felt like a really long time, and when the door opened, it wasn't the same person I saw at the shop. This new guy looked tired and maybe a bit drunk too. He stared at me, quietly said,
Yeah, of course.
and reached for the pizza. It seemed like he wanted to say more, but he just gave me a blank stare. As I was going back to my car, I saw a person in a hood running towards us, just a couple of houses away. He was staring at us. I quickly got into my car, and the guy on the porch seemed like he wanted to follow me. I started backing out, but the hooded person blocked my way. The guy on the porch was coming at me, so without really thinking, I hit the gas in reverse. The hooded person just managed to jump out of the way in time, and both of them started yelling and chasing my car onto the street. When we were under the street light, I could see that the hooded person was the same one I saw at the pizza shop earlier. They kept chasing my car, so I had to quickly reverse down the street until I could safely turn around and get away. My heart was racing, and something didn't feel right about the whole situation. I decided to call the police because I thought there were just a couple of drunk troublemakers causing a fuss. But things got really surprising. The police came, and after looking into it, it turned out these guys weren't just drunk and causing trouble for fun. They were actually part of a bigger group of criminals. The address they gave us was fake. It was meant to throw people off. The story got even more interesting when the police discovered a bunch of stolen things in their house. It turned out these guys were behind a bunch of robberies in our neighborhood. The address they gave us wasn't a mistake. It was a plan to make people think they were innocent. These guys had committed a bunch of crimes, and they thought ordering from our pizza shop would be a good way to hide because they didn't think we'd figure it out. It didn't make much sense, but their criminal history showed they had done this kind of thing before. Those two guys who seemed really drunk and were chasing me, turns out, they were part of a group that did some bad stuff before. They attacked an innocent person during a robbery. I suddenly realized that the situation could have gotten much worse for me. The surprising part of the story wasn't something supernatural, but finding out about a group of criminals. All those weird things that happened, the strange order, the car following me, and the guy in a hood, all made sense as part of a bigger, scarier plan. I felt really lucky that I got away without getting hurt, and that these bad guys were caught. In the end, I played a big role in helping the police by giving them important information. They used it to break up the whole criminal group. It was a crazy experience, something I never expected when I started delivering pizza that normal night. It just goes to show that real life can be more interesting and surprising than any ghost story. "3 years ago, when I was 15, I went on a road trip with my partner. On our way back home, feeling tired and hungry, we decided to stop at a family restaurant. It was late, and after eating, my partner needed to use the bathroom. Instead of backing into a parking spot like I usually do, I parked the car facing forward. After we finished our meal, we returned to the car. I started the engine, and when I tried to back up, the parking sensor started beeping like crazy. I looked at the dashboard screen and saw a little kid crouched behind my car, drawing something on the ground. He didn't seem to notice my car or that I was trying to reverse. It was strange because it was almost midnight, and I couldn't figure out why a kid was playing around there at that time. I didn't want to honk loudly, so I turned off my car and got out to ask a kid to move. But when I looked around, I couldn't find the kid. I thought maybe they were trying to prank me, so I crouched behind my car, but still no kid. Confused, I got back in my car, put it in reverse, and heard the sensors beep. I looked at the screen and saw the kid squatting behind my car. I was surprised and annoyed, so I called out, turned off the engine, and jumped out again, but the kid wasn't there. It was strange. I started to doubt if the kid was real. It was midnight, and I couldn't see any parents around. Why would a little kid be alone in a busy parking lot near a highway? Something didn't make sense. My partner was just as confused as I was. I asked her to stand outside while I tried reversing again, just to make sure the kid wasn't playing a game. I was driving my car and needed to go backward. When I did it for the third time, my car's sensors beeped, indicating there was a kid behind me. I told my partner to grab him so I could talk to his parents. However, my partner said there was no one there and I should keep reversing. I was nervous but trusted her. As I reversed, I expected to hit something, but nothing happened. When I looked at the monitor, there was no kid. I turned my car around to leave, and my partner got back in. We drove away slowly, worried there might still be a kid around. I couldn't resist checking the rearview mirror, and to my surprise, the little boy was still there, staring at my car. It gave me a creepy feeling, so I quickly drove out of the parking lot. I couldn't forget the strange feeling I had that night, wondering what happened. My partner and I guessed something bad might have happened to a boy in a parking lot. We thought maybe a car hit him, and what we saw was the result of a tragic accident. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember exactly where that parking lot was, but I heard about fatal accidents in that area. As time went on, we kind of forgot about the incident. Life moved on, and the strange encounter became a funny story to tell friends. But one day, I saw a headline in the local news that grabbed my attention. Mystery not solved, ghost child spotted in local parking lot. I got really nervous when I opened the article. There was a picture of the same kid I saw that night. The article talked about how others saw the kid in the parking lot too, playing behind cars. Nobody knew where the kid came from. It was like a big mystery. I couldn't believe it. The article had stories from other people who saw the kid too. Some thought it was a ghost, while others thought it was just kids playing a prank. I felt so shocked and curious. Me and my partner decided to investigate. We went back to the parking lot, hoping to find clues or see the mysterious kid again. Everything looked normal at first, but when we got closer to where I saw the kid, it felt really creepy. All of a sudden, my partner was surprised and pointed at the ground. Right where we saw a kid earlier, there were new drawings on the pavement. It gave us a creepy feeling. But the drawings weren't spooky or magical. They were simple drawings, like a kid would make with chalk. Then it hit me. It wasn't a ghost, but a real, living child. We decided to keep an eye on the parking lot, determined to solve the mystery. As it got darker, we saw movement at the edge of the lot. It was the same little boy, carrying a backpack and looking like any regular kid. He seemed surprised to see us, but didn't run away. We approached carefully and asked him where his parents were and why he was out so late. The boy hesitated, then told us he lived nearby and loved drawing on the pavement. His parents were working late, and he often sneaked out to draw when they weren't home. He never thought anyone would notice. We felt so relieved. We had been puzzled for weeks by something strange, but it turns out there was a simple reason for it. The boy just loved drawing, and that's why things seemed mysterious. We offered to walk him home and talk to his parents about keeping an eye on him in the evenings. When we left the parking lot that night, the spooky feeling went away, and it felt like a regular neighborhood with normal stories. The surprising part was that the boy was just being creative and finding comfort in drawing during the quiet nights. This experience taught us not to think of supernatural things right away and reminded us that sometimes the most mysterious things have simple explanations. In 2020, my little sister, Lily, graduated from high school. Just like when I graduated, our parents threw her a small party with friends and a few cousins. Even though I lived nearby, my busy work schedule meant I didn't see Lily often. But because it was an important moment, I took a break from work to go to her party. It was a really nice night, and I'll always remember how happy Lily looked celebrating her graduation. The party went on late, but I had to leave around 9 p.m. since I had work the next morning. The drive home took an hour, mostly on small roads with lots of twists and turns. The headlights on my car weren't great. The bulbs were dim, and the fuse sometimes went out. So, as I drove in the dark, I kept my hand on the headlight switch, ready to turn them back on whenever they went off. It was a bit annoying, but I was used to it by then. That night, the roads were really empty, and I thought I'd get home early. After driving for about 40 minutes, I saw something far away. My car lights reflected off another car's brake lights, showing it was parked on the side of the road. I got curious and thought maybe the car needed help. The other car's brake lights were off, so I thought it might be broken down. Luckily, I had jumper cables in my car. I decided to stop and offer help. I parked behind the car and saw it had a cover on the back. The driver, a man, was outside, taking something from the back of the car. While I parked, there was a small bump, and my headlights briefly went out. I pressed the brake and played with the lights until they came back on. When they did, I was surprised to see the man looking at me. A red stain was on his green t-shirt. I saw him pulling something from the truck, but it was covered in a cloth, and I couldn't tell what it was. The man gave me a scary look. Something inside me told me to go away, so I took my foot off the brake, turned the wheel, and left quickly. But the weird thing didn't stop there. As I drove past the man, I heard something hit my car. I got scared, but I kept driving without looking back. I called 911 and told them about the strange thing that happened. I said I wasn't sure, but it seemed like something bad was going on. The police came in a few minutes, and I showed them where I saw the truck. But when we got there, both the truck and the strange man were gone. The police looked in the nearby woods and quickly found a body close to the road. The young man was wrapped in a blue blanket and had been shot. I gave the police a detailed description of the truck and the man I saw. Even though the police tried their best, it took almost 2 years to catch the suspect. Something unexpected happened during the investigation. It turned out the man, Jacob Smith, was involved in a lot of crimes. He didn't just commit the murder we found, but was also connected to other unsolved cases. The surprising part was when the police discovered that Jacob had been running a network of illegal activities from his ordinary-looking truck. The blue blanket around the person had a secret hiding spot with illegal stuff inside. Jacob Smith wasn't acting alone. He was part of a bigger group doing bad things in the area. The police investigation led to breaking up the group, and they arrested many people involved in drug dealing, smuggling, and other illegal things. When everything started to make sense, it turned out my regular night encounter was connected to a much bigger criminal plan. The police said my quick thinking and reporting started a series of actions that helped take down the whole criminal group. I felt relieved that the bad guys got caught, but the whole thing made me feel uneasy. It made me realize that danger can be anywhere, even on a quiet road. It reminded me that the world is complicated. It's important to be careful and tell someone if you see something strange, because it could uncover bigger problems. My regular drive home turned into a big moment in stopping a group of criminals. It shows that real life can be more surprising than stories. I used to work at my best friend Jake's parents' diner. My job was to deliver food and help clean up tables sometimes. The job was okay, but it felt strange because Jake's parents were my bosses. I thought it would get better, but it never did. They would get mad when things didn't go perfectly. Also, Jake and I were scheduled to work on different days, so we couldn't work together like we wanted to. This happened during my last month on the job. One night, it was a regular night with a few deliveries. Toward the end, it got slow, and Jake's dad wasn't happy about that. He was grumpy because I had to wait for orders, even though it wasn't my fault. At 8:30, an hour after my last delivery, and 30 minutes before my shift ended, Jake's dad got a call. He said we had to do another delivery after my shift. He gave me the food bag, and when I checked the address, it was 40 minutes away. I got upset because my work time was almost done, and they asked me to make a delivery that would take about an hour and a half. The person in charge didn't really care about my complaint. They were just annoyed that I wasn't doing anything. We argued a bit, but eventually, I followed their instructions. The delivery address was far from our small town, and I didn't know where it was. When I was 2 minutes away, it was almost 10 p.m. There were no houses around until the very end of the drive, where I saw 6 old and creepy houses. I parked on the street, right next to the driveway. The place felt spooky because it was so far away from everything, and the houses looked really old and creepy. I took the bag to the doorstep, rang the doorbell, and knocked, but no one answered. I looked around and saw no cars on the street or in driveways, and none of the lights were on inside any of the houses. I called the customer, but they didn't answer the phone. I sat in my car, trying to figure out what to do. Because they hadn't paid yet, I couldn't leave the food on their doorstep. Then, I noticed a light moving inside the house. I got out of my car and saw a young man in his early 20s, holding a flashlight and a grocery bag. I asked if he ordered the food, and he nodded, saying sorry for taking so long to answer. When I tried to give him the food, he showed me his hands were full and asked me to put it on the kitchen table. At first, I thought he was joking, but then I realized he was serious. I looked inside and saw the place was dusty and empty. It felt like nobody was living there. I told him I was in a hurry and asked him to pay quickly, but he didn't like that. He put down the grocery bag, stepped onto the porch, and gave me a look that made me feel something was not right. I stepped back, feeling uneasy because of something I saw in his eyes. I didn't want to wait and find out what he was planning, so I quickly dropped my bag and ran to my car. As I drove away, he watched me from the porch. I felt scared and shaky during the drive back, not sure what might have happened. When I told Jake's dad about the creepy incident, he only cared that I didn't make the guy pay. That upset me, so I quit my job right then. I was tired of being treated badly by Jake's parents for no reason. Our argument was intense, and I was more focused on that than the strange man who led me to an eerie, empty house, possibly trying to rob or harm me. I got so caught up that I forgot to call the police until it was too late. Luckily, I didn't go inside the house, so who knows what could have happened. The next day, I was still shaken by the whole experience. I decided to talk to Jake about quitting the job. We met at our usual spot, a small park near his house. I told him everything, from the strange delivery to his dad not caring about my safety. Jake was surprised, but understanding. As we sat on the park bench, trying to figure things out, a man came up to us. He was about 40 years old, wearing a fancy suit that didn't seem right for our small town. He said his name was Mr. Thompson, and that he overheard our talk. He claimed to be a detective and offered to help us with the strange thing we were dealing with. I wasn't sure if I could trust him, but Jake thought it might be a good idea. Mr. Thompson wanted to know all about where the package was supposed to go and the young guy at the empty house. I told him everything I could remember. The detective promised to get to the bottom of it and gave us his contact info before leaving. After a week, Mr. Thompson got back to us with surprising news. The address I had delivered to wasn't real. It was an empty piece of land, and there was no record of anyone living there. What's more, the guy I saw matched the description of someone who had disappeared in our town years ago. The police thought he left on his own, so they closed the case. Jake and I were shocked by this revelation. So me and my friend Jake looked into what Mr. Thompson found. We went to the local police and told them what we knew. They didn't really believe us at first, but after some convincing, they decided to reopen a case about a person who had gone missing. As they dug into it, they found out something surprising. The missing person was actually living in one of the old, forgotten houses in our town. These houses had been ignored for a long time and turned out to be a kind of secret hiding place for people who wanted to live off the radar. The guy who went missing wanted to be alone, so he intentionally disappeared. He set up a routine to get food delivered to him to keep things low-key. The empty house was like his safe spot, and he used a flashlight to move around in the dark without anyone noticing. This discovery shocked not only Jake and me, but also everyone in our town. People started talking about these abandoned houses, and there were rumors about other missing folks who might be hiding right under our noses. As we learned the truth, our town started to change. The old houses were either fixed up or torn down, and a feeling of everyone caring about each other grew. People started to connect more and watch out for one another. The mystery of the empty house made us all realize how important it is to look deeper into our small town. In the end, what I first thought was a scary experience turned out to be a peek into the hidden stories of our normal-seeming town. The surprising turn not only solved the mystery, but also led to good things happening. It turned a scary experience into a reason for everyone to care more about each other and our community. About a month ago, me and my friend Lily decided to go for a drive up to the hills just before summer ended. I'm used to driving on those hill roads since I grew up near the edge of town. Lily, on the other hand, hasn't been up there much. I was really excited to show Lily how amazing it looks at night, especially when you're driving back to town. You can see all the city lights from the hills. It was 10 p.m., the sun had set, and all the lights in town had come on. But up on the hill, I had never seen any lights before. Most of the farms on the hills have fences with locked gates that say private property. The gates often have bullet holes, which show that the owners have guns and don't like people trying to get into their field. The farms use a type of irrigation system called center pivot, which has metal frames and wheels. As we were driving about a quarter mile into the hills, I noticed a light in one of the fields. I remembered that there hadn't been a light there before, and it seemed to be in the wrong place. Oh, I sighed, realizing something was off. Lily asked, what was wrong? Well, I know farmers are harvesting now, so a light in a field makes sense. But I've never seen that one before, I said, pointing to a random amber light at the edge of the field. It was really dark, so I couldn't see the fences or big rocks around. But I knew I was at the edge of the property because I'm familiar with the hills. I felt both excited and worried. I wanted to keep going because the hills would look amazing in the moonlight, and Lily had never seen them at night. But my mind reminded me that if I'm going to spend hours listening to scary stories each month, there should be some meaning in it. I told Lily, I'm sorry. If those were tractor headlights, I'd keep going. But seeing just one light there, especially in that field, is strange. I've never seen it before, so it doesn't make sense to waste energy or money lighting it. Lily is really cool. She didn't mind when we turned around just a quarter mile into our drive. We went back on the road. I don't know why, but it felt like time was ticking. Hey Lily, can you hold onto the handle? I'll be driving a bit fast, but don't worry, we're safe. Lily grabbed the handle above her side of the car, and I sped up. I felt like we needed to hurry, so I went as fast as I could back to the road. My nervous feeling got stronger when we got to the truck parking area. A little while ago, there was a white truck and a flatbed trailer in a place where they weren't before. Around 5 or 6 guys were hanging out near the truck with its headlights on. One of them was quickly driving a UTV off the trailer, and it looked like he might crash. I quickly drove past, and someone ran behind my car. I turned onto a road that leads to a main road. Hey Lily, I asked while gradually speeding up to 70 miles per hour. Were those people there when we drove by earlier? I just want to make sure I'm not imagining things. Lily replied calmly. I took a deep breath, trying to sound like her, and sped up to 75. I quickly looked in my rearview mirror. It seemed like no one was following us, but we still had 8 miles of open roads before reaching a town. Did they seem like they were rushing to you? Since there were no other cars around, we didn't have to slow down. This made both of us stay as relaxed as we could. She chuckled nervously, checking behind for cars too. Luckily, there weren't any. We went to a busy restaurant and sat in the car to calm down. We were wondering why some guys had suddenly shown up in the middle of the night. Lily thought maybe their friends were camping and needed help. But the hills are private property, so camping is not allowed there. I'm relieved we left before finding out why 6 guys rushed up the hill at night. After taking a break, we decided to keep driving, but more carefully. As we drove up the curvy roads, the moon peeked in and out of the clouds, making the surroundings look eerie. The air felt tense, and I couldn't shake the strange feeling from seeing those guys by the white truck. Lily and I tried to talk about school, music, and other things to distract ourselves, but there was still an uncomfortable feeling in the car. We were driving on a road we knew well, and Lily, who loves adventures, suggested we take a different path into the hills. Usually I'd be excited about it, but tonight I was feeling a bit nervous. I asked Lily, "Are you sure about this?" As I looked at her and the dark path in front of us, she said, with a lot of excitement. Even though I wasn't too sure, I turned the car onto the narrow trail. The headlights showed us the bumpy ground and spooky-looking tree branches. The more we drove, the stranger it felt, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching us. As we drove on the narrow path, things got tense. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling Lily's eyes on me. When we turned a corner, I saw something surprising. There was a weird glowing light up ahead. At first, it made us uneasy, but it wasn't just a regular light. It pulsed softly and seemed to play with the shadows. Lily and I looked at each other without saying anything. The air felt strange as we got closer to the mysterious light. My gut told me to go back, but curiosity kept us going. We walked along a path and suddenly reached a wide open space. There, we saw an old circle of stones illuminated by a strange glowing light. It felt like we had found a secret place that no one had been to in a very long time. The stones were tall and looked really old, making long shadows in the moonlight. Lily and I sat down, not saying anything because we were so surprised. We couldn't stop staring at the amazing sight in front of us. The weird feeling we had since we met those guys by the white truck now turned into a mix of amazement and not being sure what was going on. Lily whispered, speaking really quietly because of the sound of leaves moving. I shook my head, not knowing what to say. The stone circle just didn't seem like it belonged in the hills. It looked like something from a very long time ago. The glowing light kept doing a kind of dance, making the old stones look even more magical. Lily and I didn't need to talk. We got out of the car and felt pulled toward the circle of stones by some invisible power. The air around us felt strange, and a shiver ran down my back. As we walked into the circle, the humming got louder, surrounding us with its sound. The warm amber light pulsed strongly, almost like it was following the beat of our hearts. It felt like we were intimately connected to this old, magical place. The circle of stones was really interesting. When Lily and I stood in the middle of it, we suddenly felt super calm and peaceful. All the worries and fears we had before just went away. We didn't understand it, but we felt okay with it. While we were caught up in the moment, something strange happened. The stones that were lit up in a warm, orangey light started changing colors. They went from orange to a calming blue, making the whole place feel really peaceful. It was like time didn't matter anymore. The old stones seemed to tell us stories, and the hills around us showed us a magical dance between things we know and things we don't. Eventually, the strange feeling went away, and the blue light disappeared. Lily and I were left standing there, feeling amazed and a bit confused about what just happened. As we walked back to the car, the circle of stones stayed lit up by the moon. It was like a quiet guardian, hiding secrets in the hills. Seeing the strange light and old stones made our night special and turned a normal drive into a trip we'll never forget. Driving down the curvy hills, we were quiet but comfortable. Lily and I looked at each other, knowing that what we saw was hard to explain. The mysterious stone circle became our shared secret, a part of our lives we'd always remember. As we got closer to town, we saw the bright city lights far away. It was so different from the ancient magic we saw in the hills. The things that happened that night stayed in our minds, showing how life can surprise us, even on a simple drive through the hills.